As I looked at what Genie 3 does, right, in my research using ChatGPT, I kind of asked him, what do you think about it? Here's this interesting quote, right? This is from ChatGPT. If ChatGPT talks, Genie walks.
Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, where we demystify artificial intelligence through the lens of higher education. I'm your host, Artis Kadu, and with me today is my co-host. He's back, Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey, JC.
Hi, everybody. It's great to take a little bit of time off. I just took a week, actually 4 days or something like that, and it's fun to, do something different with the family. And yeah, we're back. The world doesn't stop for us. And today I'm playing catch up on work, emails, and all things AI artists. How are you?
This is an incredible week. Actually, it was an incredible day yesterday. So for a lot of you, just to timestamp this episode, we're recording on Wednesday, August 6th. And August 5th, a whole lot of AI news dropped. This past week has been, really crazy with models. And we're also tomorrow, or at least this week, we're expecting GPT-5 as well. So we wanted to give that timestamp and that context just because depending on when you listen to this episode, a lot of things might probably seem, a little bit off. But yeah, JC, today we're going to catch up everybody with 3 new models that dropped yesterday, and from 3 different frontier labs. One of them was from Anthropic, they introduced Claude Opus 4.1, which is an advancement of their model. We're gonna talk about, probably one of the biggest news around these models, and OpenAI finally released, 2 open source models, which is their reasoning models. And then Google releasing what they're calling a world model with Genie 3, which is very, very fascinating, moving beyond large language models and now moving into kind of world models. But guess what? That is not the whole episode, and that is not, the main feature of the episode. The main feature where we're going to focus on today is what we calling kind of back to school or study mode.
I love those.
So ChatGPT introducing study mode as a new feature and tool that was introduced last week, which is amazing and understanding and learning new things. But right before we are recording this episode, Google also released something very similar called guided learning on their Gemini app as well. So
put an addend on our notes. Put an addend on our notes. Right? It's not about AI getting smarter, which is usually one of the things that we report on, right? But it's becoming more useful, artists. As we start thinking about these drops, embody creativity and all these type of things and learning, so creating virtual worlds and whatnot. So Frontier isn't just the thing. It's about how it gets launched, it gets packaged. But since we're going to go off script, thank you, Google, for just dropping something like 2 minutes ago. There's no meta here. So artists, there's no meta here. So can you just say something on where do you see meta in all this August 5th silence? They just did a gigantic repurposing. So just 30 seconds of meta. What do you think is going to happen with those guys? Because we're not talking about them today.
There was news from Meta as well, JC.
I missed that.
They also...
I missed that then too.
I think their Jan LeCun's team over there, they released a bunch of models around biology the other day. So lots of things are happening. So more vertical models that they're releasing, but we're going to be able to see what they announce. Hopefully, as their super intelligence team has assembled, and we'll see what they announce, over the next couple of months.
Biggest payroll in the world in all things AI, probably, but exciting to see.
At least for AI, exactly.
Able to see, excited to see what they produce. All right. How do you want to do this? Do we have themes? Are we just gonna go by company? What's the taxonomy here?
So last week, for those of you who haven't listened to our episode, myself and Petter we focused on this notion of context engineering and essentially, why agents and this agentic workflows, why context is king and why it's really, really important to have the right context, the right data, so these models can make the right decisions around it. The intelligence and the models are getting really fast and they're getting really good. And one of the things that we talked about was tool usage as well. So tools as context and having the ability to reason through tools and what it can do. So agents are, essentially everywhere. And we've been talking about this. And when it comes to OpenAI, they are building models of the O3 and O4 models, but they had been promising the release of this open source models now for a while. They have not released an open source model in a long time. And finally, this week they announced and they dropped two open source models called GPT-OSS.
Are you missing a few numbers there? OSS and some numbers? Are you missing that? Because they're really good at naming their product, right? So
yeah. GPT-OSS 120B or 120 billion. So that stands for the parameters. And then a 20 billion. So the short of it is that essentially these models are not that big and they fit into, for the performance that they have, they can fit into a person's machine, that smaller model. So now you can have a state-of-the-art model like this, a reasoning model, which is comparable to some of their O3 and O4 models, actually run on your machine, which is crazy, when you think about it. So that's the idea behind those parameters in there. So state of the art, and they're calling it open weights, which means that an Apache Foundation. So it means that if somebody can take it, you can use it for a lot of different things. You can make money out of it. You can resell it. You can modify it. You can do anything that you want with it.
All right. So, artists, look, I love the details and the technical unpacking, but from a consumer point of view and also from a business model point of view, as AI experts, what's your take on, number one, why would OpenAI like to deploy an open source when they have this incredible revenue line from frontier models, that they have API connections, and it's a wonderful revenue generation opportunity for them? Open source, usually you're not. Number two, how do I benefit from that as a user, right? So right now, there's so many things that users benefit from frontier models. So what should I expect now that these things are open sourced?
Yeah. Well, OpenAI is basically was put a little bit under pressure earlier this year when they saw the R1 models and the Chinese models. So they thought, hey, we need to come out and provide this open source models. The other way they benefit is by the developer ecosystem and these models being used for a lot of different areas where an API call couldn't be made to their infrastructures, but it needed to be locked down within somebody's environment or being offline. So it opens up a whole lot more of agentic workflows that were enabled before. And they're using the same kind of APIs or the same interfaces to the model, so somebody can switch back and forth. So it's really good for them from that perspective. From the consumer side, for example, at Element, this is good because we can now, these are 91% cheaper, for example, to run these models for some of our workflows.
That's a precise number, 91%?
Yeah. Yeah, because we're looking at it from using them in Cerebras or Grok or some of the other, cloud providers that run these models separately from the OpenAI API. So if you think about it per million tokens in one or the other, it's about 91% cheaper for us as we were looking at it on the other side. So it becomes a lot easier for developers to think about, okay, I can bring in this intelligence in my agentic workflow. I don't have to be locked in and the cost doesn't skyrocket. I'm able to manage them in my infrastructure. So security, observability, more development, more changes. So a lot of those things are really good for the ecosystem. And we want people to be building on the AI infrastructure and AI layer that's built here in the US and Western values rather than Chinese ones. So nobody, I would say nobody wants to put their R1 models onto their production workflows. So that's really something that would be beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely. All right. Awesome. Where do we go next?
So the other one that got introduced and we talked about in the past, we've talked about Cursor and how coding agents have become one of the most widely used examples of agents, and the use cases are continuing to evolve from vibe coding to Cursor to Windsurf to GitHub Copilot. All of these coding agents are using models underneath these models that have relied very heavily on one of the best coding agents and use cases from Anthropic, being the Opus and models and Sonnet and Opus from Anthropic. So specifically in this case, we're talking about Opus model.
Opus 4.1.
4.1, right?
Much better name. Much better name. Go for +1 here. Anthropic +1.
Exactly. So this is an incremental increase, but when you look at some of the bench components around coding, it's one standard deviation away in terms of how much better this model is. So what that gives us is this notion that now tools like Cursor and vibe coding becomes even better, and we're going to see the effect of this on tools that we're using to kind of produce code. So very, very interesting, and something to again, Anthropic said that this is the first of the improvements, and they're not stopping here, meaning that over the next few weeks they're going to release more and more improvements. But it's a head-to-head, and they preempted the GPT-5 announcement that we're expecting to happen over the next day or so this week.
The thing I've always liked about Anthropic and how they release, right, is they're sticking to their guns, right, and they're kind of what I would call the strategic intent on creating a space for owning compute AI as it relates to coding, right? It really looks like not only smarter, more autonomous, surgical, but it's developer ready, and this is how we start seeing applications of LLM and Frontier Labs taking those verticals. And yeah, they continue to own this space. The benchmarks are fantastic. And it's a new bar for LLMs doing structured real time work. So I really like it. I kind of got this from my research, but I just wonder if we can do a little bit of a double click of what do you see there, right? So excels in software engineering, a lot of long context reasoning, and a power boost for all AI as a pilot and autonomous agents. So this is running in parity with agentic frameworks and coding. So there's something about automation and complex workflows here as well, right? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so with agents, there's this notion that you need context, but sometimes you provide a lot of context. The agent or the model needs to reason through that context, and these models are getting better and better at reasoning with more and more context. So both from a tool usage perspective and also from kind of the attention span. So these model is a lot better in terms of that in-depth research and data analysis skills that it has when you think about detailed tracking and agentic search. So those are both things that are very important when you deal with code. Like, where is the attention? If you give it a really large code base and you say, okay, I'm trying to replace this particular component, like how does it find that and how does it put that? And then also the tool usage. It's like, well, I have a million tools that I can use. How do I reason through what tool to use and what the context is? So that agentic search is also very, very important there.
And a page from your prior session with Peter, which, by the way, you guys did great. Peter's third session with us. He's a keeper. He's a keeper. But anyway, so the context is what it's making these LLMs astronomically good, right? And as you and Peter were discussing, right, when you actually do the engineering architecture of this, context is what makes hallucination rates and basically agentic anything AI work. So fast forward to what Opus and Claude are trying to do is they're trying to make these deployments in code better, precise, and not just basically garbage that gets introduced into code bases and whatnot. There's a divide, artists, of developers that I'm a classically engineering trained engineer, therefore I code, and the ones that are actually all into amplification and augmentation of coding via AI. So I think this is going to start moving the first group even more onto the already adapted converted ones.
Yeah. I think the models are getting really, really good at coding. Some senior software engineers, they're like, well, I can't, the models are breaking things, right? I'm telling them to fix one thing and they're breaking another thing. And it all comes down to the capabilities of the models and how agentic they are in terms of reasoning through this large code bases. And that's what we're seeing here. The workflows on agents are being caught up by the model capabilities, and then of course the science on how you do context engineering and you bring things in and out. So the system kind of is benefiting by this intelligence that's being introduced, and we're seeing it right away with Opus 4.1. So expect a lot of your vibe coding tools to be a little bit better. So pick this model if you want more of that. But let's move on, JC. I think there was another one from Google, another model from Google that got released, and this was different. We haven't really
Genie's out of the bottle.
That's right. So Genie is out of the bottle in here, and we're talking about Genie 3, which is a new frontier world model. So this notion of world models, we haven't really seen this before.
You're gonna have to explain that one to me. I understand what it does, but what is a world model?
So world models are AI systems or models that go beyond this text or images, and they kind of create dynamic or interactive simulation of environments. So think like a virtual sandbox where they understand physics and actions and changes that persist over time. All generated by perhaps prompts. So unlike a static generator where you have an image that you generate, this let agents live, for example, and learn in this world. So it's think about it like a video game engine, but these models are generating that environment in real time versus video game engines. They're very similar, right? It's very, very similar. So they understand, but video game engines have an engine underneath that's simulating things, whereas the world models are generating this in real time. So there is no engine underneath, right?
Gotcha. So in this case, when we need to start thinking about the world model, not as a global that applies to all the cases, but its natural ability to fully generate worlds. There's this idea of simulative, interactive environments, and as I'm hearing from you, it comes from the text, from the prompts in real time, and there's no preloaded scenes or static frames. So in that sense, worlds are generated in a very agentic AI way, which we know is not deterministic. So, all right, tracking.
Yeah. So this is this is essential, or this is really important because for what we call like embodied AI, right? Think about robotics and think about or agents that train in kind of this infinite simulation, right? Back and forth and back and forth. So learning, planning, and adopting while they're being unsupervised. It's like kind of a kid dreaming different scenarios. And, a lot of experts say that this is how it's a direct path to AGI, so to speak, because it's providing a lot more unlimited curriculum for generalization. It's like, how do you generalize the world around you? And most of the things that we know and we perceive are all about our ability to live in a 3D world or to live in the world around us. And if we can simulate that, and if we can create these models that understand that world around and they can act and reason about that world around it, then it becomes a lot easier for this, reasoning to become more generalized. So it's really, really interesting, I would say. But to talk about in this specific case, again, I find it very interesting because the capabilities are around modeling physics, right? Which is crazy, right? It has learned how to model physics. It understands There's no ray tracing or anything like that. It just generates these things on the fly. So it knows like phenomena like water and lighting and complex environment interactions. And then it can kind of simulate natural, worlds. But what I thought it was really cool as we were looking at some of the examples here, it can do fictional animation and fiction as well. So think about this in terms of how you can now generate things that are very fictional for gaming or for like with games, like usually you have pre-built assets with games, right? You have these 3D models that you put in a world, and then now you have physics that interact with that. So everything is pre-built. But when you have these world models, you can imagine anything, and you can just the agent or you can interact, and you can say, build me this world or build me that world, and then you can interact with it. So it's very, very cool in terms of what it opens up in terms of creativity and the ability for us to do that. You can do things like location and historical setting exploration, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of go into a geography and you can say, give me a paraglider that, goes through this forest during this particular time period, right? And you'll just generate that world for you. So you can do that. I don't know if you've had your my glasses, for example, right? So if we move to agents with glasses and simulations, now you can simulate these worlds, which are, so hopefully Apple thinks about this and they include them as part of their
God, I forgot about those
their
glasses.
vision glasses, right?
Let me have you address this question, right? As I looked at what Genie 3 does, right, in my research using ChatGPT, I kind of asked him, what do you think about it? Here's this interesting quote, right? This is from ChatGPT. If ChatGPT talks, Genie walks. So it's, as you are mentioning, and also in this research, it's suggesting that it's leaps ahead. But here's not my pushback. Here's my question. We've been talking a lot about these simulations, these creative, aspects that AI is bringing. So it looks like one more of the same. So maybe, what is the difference between doing a beautiful with 4.0? We start getting graphics and we start getting all these type of things. But now, why is this different? The other things didn't have physics. Didn't the other things were able to generate worlds? I mean, for all I'm concerned, someone can spend 10 hours and do a beautiful game in Lovable. What is making Genie 3 such a distinctive leap from its counterparts as it relates to world or basically simulated environments?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So the models that are generating images, they're basically, a lot of them are called diffusion models. So they work on diffusion, meaning that they have figured out the relationship between different pixels, right? Or different edges and shapes and so on and so forth. So at the very granular level. So they figured out that. So when you prompt it to generate something, it's going to go ahead and say, oh, okay, I know how to do that. So it's kind of putting together and it's trying to generate an image for you. And with video models, it does the same thing. It tries to generate image after image after image. Whereas these world models, the great thing is that there is an environment consistency that's over it, right? So it remembers the world and what it's generated. So there is this consistency that happens even when it's not looking. It's kind of still remembers that, and it's able to do it over minutes, right? So the memory that it remembers these things and it can generate more and more and more of that world. It's very different from a video model right now. In some cases, you could say that VO3 or some of these video models have some of that baked in. They were like the first introduction of world models. But the world models go beyond that and go and remember a lot more than just kind of the next frame and the next frame. So it's a little bit different. It's like mimicking from what it's seen before versus having an understanding of the physics and having those concepts baked in and generating based on those first principles. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, for those of you listening who maybe not following the technical depth of artists, the the analogy I can give you is you start thinking about photography and how we had black and white and like you got a picture and it looked like a wonderful picture, but the way you produced that picture, it had all these steps. It seems that in Genie 3 we just went digital and that picture as produced, whether it's better or worse than its counterparts, it just produced totally different. And there's an aspect of predicting the next move in a world that it created, and all those features are going to be related. So,
Yeah.
love, very exciting, very exciting. Artists, this is a big move into AGI in the AGI race. Yeah.
I was going to say for education and AGI, this is huge for learning, right? Because you think about simulating history, like you work in ancient Rome, or like you have a real-time generation of this historical things, or physics labs.
Every time I go wine tasting with my wife, and after the first bottle, and we get funny, it's always the same prompt. What decade and person you want to come and visit and spend a day with them? So now we don't have to basically spend I don't know $100 getting accelerated by wine and visuals. We can do it. Speaking of that, what do we know about the cost structure? Is this token based? Is this how consumers going to be able to start generating their own worlds? What do we know about that?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure where they're making this available, to be honest.
Gotcha.
So this is
it's too early, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a little too early, but
just yesterday.
Exactly. But we just know that it's available for research and for folks that need it. And I believe it's also it might be on Gemini, but I have to double check on their cloud. But Google didn't stop there, right? And the main reason of this episode is that we wanted to talk about kind of education and the continuation of this theme that we talked earlier when Google had their big user conference, and how they're introducing Gemini and Gemini for learning, and all of the the ideas on how Gemini can move things from just the general way of answering one-shot questions to now perhaps a more kind of guided teaching. And we've seen a lot of ed tech companies build systems or build applications on this notion of chatbots and ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude or whatever. They're not very good for learning because there's this pedagogy that's part of it. You need to kind of understand what the flow is, and you got to be Socratic. Do you teach the Socratic method, or do you do quizzes? So a lot of systems have been built on that. Well, what happened here today over the past week is that Google, basically, Gemini introduced what they called guided learning. So rather than this one-shot question and answer, guided learning, it goes deeper into topics, and you can learn it learns what works best for you in terms of learning, right? So this is something that was introduced, and now they had a specific model that they had developed called LearnLM, a family of models that was really fine-tuned for learning, and it was grounded in this educational research. But now they included those capabilities in Gemini, and they added in as a guided learning feature, which is incredible. And part of this, they also introduced a whole bunch of new announcements around education. So a couple of those announcements that I can pull up here was Google coming really strong and essentially giving for free Gemini Pro or Google Pro AI to every student that is over the age of 18 plus in the US, as well as Japan, Indonesia, and Korea, and Brazil. They can sign up for 12 months of Google AI Pro plan for free. So incredible value, right? And sometimes I think these plans you have to pay for, I believe they're about $100 or $200. I don't know, in order to get, Gemini 2.5 Pro, deep research as part of that, Notebook LM, I don't know if you've seen Notebook LM recently, JC, but
Yes, of course. We've only been sharing, all the presentations that we've been doing on Notebook LM. But artists, this playbook there's a lot there. So let me just work backwards. So as it relates to Google and Gemini opening up to a free access to students. Playbook that has worked really well. It's a common practice for technology providers to give the free Tableau, the free Microsoft, the free whatever to universities and students, because the competitive landscape is that if I learn with it, right, when I become a professional, I already have the skill set, so I'll default to it, and I may ask my boss, hey, can I have PowerPoint to do my presentations? And maybe we don't have it. And things like that, after the course of the years, is how you create dominant technologies. Having said that, for me, this is fantastic. It's also catch-up mode for Gemini, because we know that Google is trailing on monthly downloads.
You mean OpenAI and ChatGPT
relative to the OpenAI
and ChatGPT. That's right.
ChatGPT, right? Now, the part that I find fascinating, back to educational and how I learn, right? If these tools are going to be there, now having a pedagogy aligned native AI, tutor that's scalable, it's fantastic, right? Let me ask you a question, and maybe I'm going to take us in a long loop. How many phone numbers do you remember today? Like, if I ask you phone numbers, how many do you remember?
Maybe like 3. Mine, my wife's, and my parents, maybe.
Or emergency, right?
Yeah.
If I ask Artis, the 13-year-old kid, how many do you remember then? Like 59?
Yeah, I mean, I had to remember everything. So a lot of them.
Right? So our memories, they tend to do shortcuts, and we have all these interesting wiring. So what is happening is, as we start going into shortcuts on that AI allows us to amplify, right, we're going to start thinking differently. I really like this slow down. I want to call these slowdowns that these tutors bring us. And why are you asking that question? And how would you frame it? And all these pedagogical aligned learning partners are going to allow us to basically get the answer, maybe in a bit longer, lower, but get our brain stimulated on logic chains and technology, things that we're taking for granted. So I'm really, really happy that this is happening, and it's not only in Google, but it's in other parts of Frontier Labs. So, all right, that's my contribution.
No, that's look. At Element, we are also pushing people to learn new things, and we are looking at LMSs that essentially do this kind of testing, so to speak, on a subject. It's not just the consumption of information, but it's also how do you consume it, and what's the right way for somebody to learn some information. So the way that this information gets produced, and even when I teach something to my kids, there's a methodology around it. There is assessment, there is kind of recall, there's all these different things that they go into play. And so far, ChatGPT and Gemini have not had the opportunity to do that. We built custom GPTs that we instructed to ask questions and to do blah, blah, blah. However, it's kind of, there's some limitations to that. Sometimes it does it well, sometimes it doesn't do it well. So what's happening here with the new capabilities, essentially it's a new mode, right? It's a new mode. And it seems like with Gemini, they incorporated this model that was specifically built for education into Gemini now. And it's a guided learning that encourages participants through probing, open-ended questions. It sparks discussion, provides opportunities for deeper dives into a particular subject, and it aims to build deep understanding instead of just answering those questions. So in this case, guided learning, it says it breaks down problems step by step, and it adapts to explanations to your needs. So again, think about the implications to teaching and learning or education in the classroom. This is something that a teacher does, right? And of course, we said that there's a lot of companies that are being built around this. But when you think about now this being available in a horizontal generic chat and an AI platform like Gemini and even OpenAI that we're going to talk a little bit about, they have the same feature, but it's called study mode, right? In ChatGPT, it's called study mode. In Gemini, it's called guided learning. So both of those features are super important, super relevant, and something that I can see not just myself, but I can see our CS team, our sales team, and my kids using more and more. What do you think, JC?
Real life application. I have 3 people starting next week. How are they going to learn the ways, right? We all want them to be successful, and we're going to have to give them 90 days, call it onboarding, for them to basically show up and do their magic. Guess what happens? In these 90 days, it's the same curriculum that the other 15 people went through, and it's not personalized, it's not customized to the information that the LLM knows about who this individual is, from tokens, from context, from memory. So not only doing that in personalization, with the personalization that these LLMs bring, it's fascinating. Think about these applications that we look into the company today, artists. And for our listeners, you have variations of your artist. So artists, our CEO has an approach, and many times we want to ask a prompt like, how would artists do it, right? And how would artists think about that? And then you come with the answer. But what is the important thing, and what is it that we're trying to do is like, why do you say A when I would have said B? And then you go through your process, your logic. Today you sent, I don't know, artists, 15 videos explaining some context and things of that sort. So potentially what is happening here is not only that you get the answer or the right answer or whatever, the answer, but in terms of the process, how the answer gets produced, that's where the money is at. So study modes, application, applying it to the workplace, I'm the most excited about, right? Because I just find that there's tons of ways students learn, but in organizations, that's a problem that we haven't cracked. In these systems that we're testing, I'm still disappointed. I think that there is an opportunity here that is very soon touching our doors, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the economics and like the ecosystem. So this killed a whole bunch of ed tech companies, to be honest. I think so if you're an ed tech company working on teaching and learning and building systems for this feature just killed everything. When you look at the ChatGPT with ChatGPT EDU and the advancements that they made in a lot of schools, I'm pretty sure that that's how they have kind of brought a lot of these components together. But if you look at the key features now, it's transitioning to ChatGPT because they've introduced a little bit more detail, whereas the Gemini version, it was just released and we didn't have a lot of chances to see from folks that have been using it. But with ChatGPT study mode, the key features are around this interactive prompts that combines the Socratic questioning, hints, self-reflection, to guide the understanding, scaffolded responses, which means that information is organized into easy to follow sections. It really highlights these key connections between topics, and it keeps the information engaging with just the right amount. Sometimes we can be overwhelmed by the responses that we get back, but this information is in the context and reduces the overwhelm for complex topics. This idea of personalized support. So it means that lessons are tailored to the right level of the user. It's crazy, right? This is like personalized learning.
Yeah, the memory, the context, all the things that allow you to personalize you. And by the way, if you don't know what we're talking about, let us know, email us. We have a ton of resources on how to personalize your ChatGPT that we've done in our conferences and whatnot. But this is gigantic, artists. How they've built on the infrastructure to allow to truly do personalization is super fun.
Yeah, exactly. And the hardest part around this is knowledge. They call them knowledge checks, but basically assessment, like quizzes and open-ended questions to understand getting this personalized feedback to track progress, which is really, really interesting. And it's probably one of the hardest things to do, but this is a key feature here. And it talks about knowledge retention, having this ability to kind of quiz in the context that you're in. Last but not least, talks about this is very easy to go back and forth. So you can kind of continue a conversation, but then you can easily toggle on study mode, during a conversation if you want to kind of get more answers versus now you're like, okay, I have this section, I want to understand this a little bit more. Let's switch on study mode. So kind of going back and forth between study mode and regular mode is pretty interesting in here.
So here's just an example for context, right? So prompt question: what is life? In normal ChatGPT, it just basically takes the answer of life is this, right, and kind of gives me a philosophical answer. In study mode, what is life? The first thing that asks is for context, right? Let's unpack. It's a step by step, and since we're in study mode, let me ask you first, interactive. When you ask what is life, are you thinking more? A, biology. 2, philosophy. 3, personal. On the first mode, it assumed that it's a question about philosophy. What does it mean to be alive? And answer that way. Here, just basically asking that. And in that interactive process is what's going to take us through, probably ending up in some type of assessment. So yeah, that's why I classify it as a slowdown. And it's a really, really good slowdown.
So the way that they built this, and we don't have to get too much into that, but just understand that essentially I said this is V1, and we're working on making this even deeper into the model itself rather than kind of the way it works with system prompts. And so essentially they're like, well, we're going to expand this functionality to basically think about like how do we do more clear visualizations for complex or text heavy concepts, things like setting, like they want to be able to set goals or have goal setting and progress tracking across the different conversations, because you might have different conversations on the same topic. And then now imagine you can say, I'm learning X or Y, and then you have different conversations rather than the same conversation, and then deeper personalization tailored to each student's skill level or goal. So you can see how they're building ChatGPT as a companion for students in the classroom, and of course for a lot of other folks who are going through this teaching and learning. So very, very interesting time to be, in this space around teaching and learning. We knew that this was useful, very useful, and people were using it, but now those features are actually in the products themselves. And going back to one of the things around the Google announcement today was that not only are they giving their Gemini and an AI Pro, Google AI Pro, to students for free for 1 year, which you should encourage all of your students, by the way, to go and get it. It's amazing, and they're getting so much more value for it. And with study mode, it's just, huge. If your school has ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT as well with study mode. But in addition to that, if you're an institution or if you're an institutional leader, Google also announced $1 billion of AI training and resources. So they're kind of basically saying that today's students are the true generation of AI natives, right? So AI natives are entering institutions, they're entering the workforce, and they're going to use these models in a way that no one predicted before. And they want to make sure that they're contributing to that workforce and that training and that teaching. So they're saying to support their success, we're providing $1 billion in funding over 3 years for American education, including AI literacy programs, research funding, and cloud computing resources. They announcing the Google AI for Education Accelerator, which is an initiative to offer free AI training and Google career certifications to every college student in America. So if your school is not part of it, you should go to and kind of sign up for it. There's about 100 public institutions right now that are part of it. It seems that, if looking at these numbers, but it seems that there's a whole bunch of schools around this accelerator, perhaps even some schools that are Element partners, in here as well. But yeah, if you're not part of it, try to apply and join the accelerator, get a lot of those resources and programs, and bring that AI, training and get those dollars into your schools.
When it comes to AI, never say no to trying something, right? It's one of the things that we do constantly, technology, new tool, we're trying it. So now for free, obviously. So take advantage of this. However, this is not the first time Google. It's number 2 or number 3 in a ranking of preference. Think about search, email. Think about productivity tools like, Google Docs or Google Slides. As we hear about them today and thinking that they were not even considered number 1 or number 2, it's crazy. So they know that this type of build-up and program partnership is something they've probably done in the past to become the monster that operates in our day-to-day life, productivity, personal, when it comes to emails, calendars, maps, and things of that sort. They've been here before multiple times when they're number 2 or number 3, and they know how to play it, artists. So when I see these things, artists, where my head is going, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're playing the long game. Right? They're playing the long game because they know where this is going.
Exactly. Somebody coming in, it's giving the developers the tools for free because, or students the development tools for free, or the lab or whatever, because when they go into workforce, they're going to want to use those tools and they're going to use those platforms. So it's the same play here. But for us, as educators and folks who are working in higher education, we should really think about providing our students and providing our staff with a lot of this AI, training resources, and that's going to be super important for how we make these available to students. We shouldn't just think about the corporations or this frontier companies, because yes, they do have an agenda. However, as leaders, we should start thinking more holistically on how we're incorporating AI as part of the whole student journey, as part of the whole support staff, journey as well.
Oh man.
So crazy episode today. Lots of information, agents moving forward really, really fast, lots of resources, ed tech companies being killed by the big hyperscalers and the folks who are putting this, tools together, more funding for AI teaching and learning and AI literacy. So how do we wrap all these things up?
Here's my take, and then go for this and close this, artist. So it's not about fast, it's about useful. And technology deployments today, in a way, that are successful, need to be thinking about the two. So what we saw today is models that are faster, better, right? But they coming together with useful to learning guys, the ecosystem, and that's the stage that we're in. I mean, on one hand side, we saw a model that it's a true move forward against AGI, Genie 3. But at the same time, we start seeing the same company thinking about how the support systems of education and funding, playing the long game, brings it all together. So today, it's about moving faster, but moving also better and useful.
All right. Well said, JC. Well, if you want to keep up with...
What, you don't have anything? That's it? You're just going to let me close? Come on, man.
Yeah, why not? I think that was a great close.
All right. All right. Appreciate it.
To everybody who's listening until now, I think, we appreciate your feedback. And if you can leave us a review everywhere where you listen to this podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and just let us know what other things should we cover. We're trying to bring you the latest in terms of AI and what's happening and how we contextualizing it for kind of higher education and AI leaders in this space of education. We are going to keep an eye out. Obviously, by the time this drops, hopefully GPT-5 has dropped, and we'll give you a little bit more context around that. But until next time, everybody, let us know how we can be of use to you with all this huge amount of information and acceleration in AI.
Thank you, everybody.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.